Welcome to the Fire Away Podcast. The podcast that is the Fire Away Podcast. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's do it.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fire Away Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Meyer. Check us out on Instagram, Fire_Away Podcast on Instagram. Catch up all episodes now anywhere you get your podcasts. We are on all major platforms. Special guest today, Mr. Matt Meyers. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for joining the show today. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, man. This is a pleasure to have you on here. First of all, I want to say thank you for forwarding me every email that goes to you that was supposed to come to me.
Oh, absolutely.
That's been a fun going on since day one. M. Meyer and M. Meyers. So
In the same room, finally.
finally, we are together. So no, it's what was the one late, the Citibank one that was like a whole ton of POs that wind up going to you? I'm like, do not add an S to this email, ma'am. Like, I'm telling you, if you add an S, it's going to go to someone else. And what happens? They send them all to Matt.
You know, it's funny. I can't tell you how many people ask me if your sister is actually my wife.
Really? Like, have you did check? So my daughter told me the other day that they call her Mayer in school, Bradley Mayer, and I'm like, do you correct them? She said, no, I like being called the mayor. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good. I said, but you're going to get an S put on it a lot too, so get used to it. Because I was Mark Myers forever, and then at some point you just go, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so you get the Halloween.
Yeah.
The time.
I have a cousin whose middle name is Michael, so he was always
Yes.
Michael Myers forever. So I guess we kind of talk a little bit about everything on the show. It doesn't necessarily have to stay work related or personal. We like to keep it light. We like to keep it serious. Whatever really happens. But what I do want to know is, first of all, how long you've been here and when you started here and all that.
So I started February 5th, 2001, actually.
Okay, so you're coming up on 25 years shortly. You'll be coming up on 25 years.
Yeah.
I like to call that a quarter of a decade.
Don't
make you feel old.
I was going to say
that way.
you're making me feel really old right now.
So February 2001. When you started here, what was your position?
My
Yeah,
job,
what was your
sorry.
job title? There you go.
So actually, it was kind of interesting. I came in as a helper in the systems service division. Now, back then, system service was quite a bit different. We didn't have all the different groups that we had back then, of course. So system service meant you were doing suppression, special hazards, vehicle systems,
So it was all together back then.
Pretty much everything was all kind of
So that
bunched
makes
together.
sense. So honestly, I didn't know that about you, and it kind of explains a little bit about why you know a little bit about everything. I mean, you kind of started and doing a little bit about everything.
I actually even like at the end of the day, I guess for some strange reason, I just have this work ethic where if I feel like I'm getting paid for 40 hours, I should do 40 hours worth of work. So even like we didn't really do portables in that division so much at that time. But at the end of the day, Steve Clark, who was the dispatcher at that point, he had a lot to do with portables, as you may recall.
I do, yeah.
Even on his last days while he was working here, he was, still selling extinguisher cabinets and
not to cut you off, but Steve, when I first took over as the dispatcher for Steve Emhoff, Steve Clark stayed up my rear about just everything. Like, he questioned everything. But Steve was one famous for going back in my day, I can't believe we're charging for this.
Yes.
This much. Back in my day, it was this much. I'm like, Steve, you're talking 20-some years ago, man.
50-some years ago.
Yeah. But yeah, so... So, yeah, I mean, I know, like I said in this, so I guess you took it upon yourself to learn a little bit more about portables.
Yeah. If we had short days, every once in a while, he would just be like, go back to the shop. And so I'd go back into the shop, and I learned how to fill extinguishers. And, of course, when you do anything like that, you start to learn more about the codes and the ins and the outs. And probably more often than not, you learn what not to do instead of what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a troubleshooting position. A lot of times, and it's because of you. And that's how you kind of learn what not to do, right? It only takes one extinguisher going off in your face before you learn what not to do to have that happen again. Kind of brings you, I guess, to what you do now. director of.
I'm not a director. I guess
Okay.
technically I have the title of manager, but really I'm a manager of a process more than I am of people, which is kind of a unique situation. I'm involved a lot with trying to facilitate more so than actually train these days.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is we've got so many divisions within the company. They all do different things. It's hard for any one person to specialize in everything, right?
Yeah,
You can't,
so-
by definition, specialize means that you're really good at something, but you can't realistically be really good at everything.
Everything. Yeah.
So what you do is you bow down and you step back and you look at your subject matter experts, and you help them a lot of times. I mean, we've got a lot of really good, talented, knowledgeable people. But you put them up in front of a group of people to talk, and they'll lock up.
Yeah.
They can't remember what they want to talk about. So we work with some of those things. Sometimes they are a special guest, but they're actually doing most of the training. A lot of times it's just like, when you have somebody on the show, it's when they first start talking, they might have they're a little cold.
Yeah. It's most of our excuse me, most of our podcasts I think start that way. Until people warm up and they get comfortable, and then the end of the episode turns out better than the beginning because of that. So I mean that makes sense. So like you said, you're facilitating more than actually doing it yourself, which probably is a little bit of a relief, but probably could be a little bit more stressful because now you're not in as much control.
Well,
of it.
I'm a control freak, so
Yeah.
you nailed it right on the head. It's I want everything to be repeatable, and I want it to be consistent. And when you start to release some of those things to somebody else, you're kind of you can only kind of really watch what they're going to do and see if you can
you're
help guide them through the
managing
process.
more schedules than just
Yeah.
yours and the technicians at that point. You got a third party involved. Do you like it?
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
I love it. That was the one thing that was tough about being in the service department when you're just doing regular inspection type stuff. And that's just routine things in general. I mean, like, so honestly, sometimes it takes a special person, for instance, to be in the portable shop.
Yeah.
They're doing
I
the
agree
same
with
thing
that.
every day.
Yeah.
So how do you be consistent about the quality and stay? It takes a special mindset for somebody to do that. So when you have the opportunity to branch off and do something different, you get to do an installation, you get to do some troubleshooting, things like that. That's when you get to use more of your capacity, your mental,
Yeah.
as opposed to your.
Yeah, that's why I feel like, as being part of the portable shop and now managing it, cross training super important because of that, right? It's otherwise if you're sitting there doing the same thing over and over, quality will struggle after a while.
You got to keep it fresh.
Yeah, you
so
got to
to
keep
speak.
it fresh. So, and I had somebody back when I was growing up tell me it's better to know a lot about or a little about a lot of things than a lot about a little amount of things. And I kind of always found that to be true. Like I don't need to be specialized in one thing. I'd rather know a little about a lot. I don't, and I can say that, but not so much in this industry. I really don't know a little about a lot of things for sure. I definitely know a lot more about portables and than I even do about pre-engineered. Now I've been doing pre-engineered for 2 years here at Fireline, and it's changed so much since I've done it in the early 2000s that I really just have to utilize my supervisors. You know what I mean? Because they're the knowledgeable ones.
They're in the thick of it, all day long.
Yeah, so
They're
and they know,
entrenched.
but I don't know. I guess it could be. It depends on the person you are, I guess. But I can tell, just from knowing you that's how you feel about it. You're going to learn. You're going to learn a little bit about everything that you can just to be, because I've come to you
Absolutely.
for numerous things, and I've lost count.
Oh my God! Now he's blowing the smoke. No.
No, but I mean, honestly, I've lost count about the things that, hey, you and Frank Chenoweth are the go-to guys. If we can't figure this out.
But like you just
I know
said
you
too,
guys
it's about managing your resources, right? I mean, you don't have to know a lot about a lot of things. As long as you know a little, you know which direction to go into, and then you can find the resources, the quality resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Like
you guys, and I say you guys, I mean you and Frank, but and I know you've never shied away from assisting with anything that we've come to you. You've never given me one feeling of this isn't my job or I don't know. It's always been, if you didn't know, I'm going to find out and I'm going to get back to you.
I think we all.
We're going to figure that out together.
I think anybody who's got any kind of tenure at any company, but also especially at Fireline, we've got this kind of mantra. We've got this kind of family feel that we're all kind of here to help each other.
Yeah, same team. That's what
yes.
I go by team, right? Same team. And I will say that, and I've said it countless times on here, that not everybody drinks the Fireline Kool-Aid, but I do think that is one of the things that we do best here is help each other out. Throughout the departments, it's really hard to find someone who's not willing to help.
Yes.
So that's
well, the ones that don't want to help are the ones you can't find.
You can't find. So it's like going into Home Depot and trying to get somebody to help you find something. They'll run from you before they help you out there. So that's kind of enough about work. So where'd you go? So I know you did a lot. I know Fred and I were talking a little bit before you came on here about some things back in the day, and I know you've been here almost 25 years. So you've had to see some things. You've had to see the industry change, the company change. Like, what are some of the biggest things that you've noticed throughout the years, not just in at Fireline, but maybe industry wide?
Industry wide is not just in our industry, but it's in a general across the spectrum kind of scenario. It's a change in time. I guess I'm definitely dating myself when I talk about this, but back when I was in high school, every high school had like a tech ed kind of a scenario. I mean, like every guy and every girl went through tech ed, but you also went through like home ec and stuff like that. And then it was interesting because when I was in high school, it was like computers were around, but they just were not like everybody didn't have a computer.
Yeah, it wasn't relied on.
Exactly. It was like the whole big thing was computers were going to cut down. It was like the one big thing was like, oh, it's going to cut down on the amount of trees we're going to kill, right? And it's going to make information so much more accessible and processes so much faster. So that was like everybody's drive back then was to tell everybody, go to school for computers.
Yeah. I just talked to Ryan Malloy about that on her podcast. Like that era, like the last 20 years of school have been get ready for computers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the reality is that computers were going to come and do their own thing anyhow. The problem is, though, is we took a lot of the kids when I was in school and steered them towards computers and steered them away from all of the mechanical trades, the technical trades that were anything else.
Yeah. That's true. It makes perfect sense. And now I actually think there's a little bit of a reversal on that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's not fast enough. I think we finally have, we probably recognized 10, 15 years ago, we needed more.
Yeah.
And we screwed up, but nobody really wanted to own up to it. So now the problem is now we're trying to reverse this process. I've got my own kids, and it's like I look at a couple of my kids, and it's like my oldest one, I thought for sure he was going to be, like in some kind of IT world kind of thing, or he was actually into architecture and engineering and all this stuff. Now he's a firefighter.
Yeah.
And we literally, that was the day before he was supposed to start school that we found out that he wanted to go that route. And it was just kind of a shock because it's like everybody grooms these kids the same way. And it's like they pull out a phone and they can do all this stuff on a phone that we did on computers when I was, I was in school. But they don't know how to change a tire.
There's no hands-on life anymore.
I have a contractor working on my house right now, and he was like, absolutely, he had to leave the job site because he said his kid is 27, had a flat tire and had no idea how to find the lug wrench, didn't know how to fix the tire, didn't know anything about this stuff. So he literally left his job, and he was like cussing himself the entire time. He's like, I can't believe. He's like, I failed this kid. I didn't teach him this.
At some point, what responsibility is that of ours as a parent to teach our children that? Because look, they can YouTube it. I guarantee you they can figure out how to YouTube it. But YouTubing it and actually getting it done, is two separate things. They know how to call AAA, But yeah, so and I say that I know because I know some of the public schools around are really pushing the technical.
They're finally starting to get
Going
into
back
it.
to
Yep.
whether it be wood shop or electrician or welding, and they're really pushing these trades and these kids, which is great because there's only so many technology jobs out there. You can go to school for computers all you want, but I know two people in my life that have computer science degrees that don't use
nothing
them.
with it. Yep.
Yeah, they're doing nothing with it. They're in the law industry. So it's you can do it all you want, but what there is a need for now is manual labor.
Yes.
We need electricians and we need mechanics and
But it's funny though too, because I mean, I hope the boss is not listening, but then again, she's pretty generous about the salaries around here. The reality is too is that like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, everybody looked at somebody who was in a mechanical or a manual trade, and they were like, oh well, they're beneath us, so
yeah,
they
there's
shouldn't
a
make
stigma
that kind
for
of
blue
money.
collar
Yeah.
there, and
It's
it
coming
kind of still
around.
is. I mean,
It is, and there always will be because everybody feels like okay, well, this guy's just like he's putting ductwork in my house. How hard can that be? But the reality is that can you do it?
yeah, right. How hard can it be? Well, not.
Yeah.
I actually did sheet metal for a week and quit. Which was doing HVAC stuff and building these ducts and all that. It's not for everybody.
It's got to be your thing.
Yeah, it's got to be your
Yeah.
thing for sure. It was terrible. Yeah, and like the stigma for blue collar, I don't know when that goes away. I think here in the Baltimore area, it's a little bit different. It's a blue collar kind of town.
We are. I mean, it's
you
funny. We talk about football too. It's like we always talk about like our adversary is the Steelers. It's another giant.
Yeah, they're very,
local
and it's
blue-collar.
easy to have an adversary, and you find that out a lot. That when you do that, it's because you're so similar,
Yes.
right? It's a steel town, and we had the steel mill back, and what was it, Bethlehem Steel back in the day here. So a lot of blue collar jobs. I mean, my father was a blue collar worker. All my uncles were blue collar workers. Guys that worked with their hands growing up that set that example. There was never once in my life where I thought that I'd be behind a desk. I know I wanted to, but I wasn't the guy that got good grades in school. And to me, when you went to school back then, if you didn't get grades, you weren't going to be the guy behind the desk. You were going to be the guy in the field. You were going to be the guy working on the car or the extinguisher or whatever.
There's
it
a
was.
different level of satisfaction that comes from those things too. Being where I am right now, it's like sometimes you've got to sit behind a desk for hours on end, and you look at what you did and you feel like you absolutely achieved nothing. Whereas sometimes back in the field, it was like you could see what you did by the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a
So-
sense of accomplishment
yes.
at the end of the day.
So that's another part of determining who's going to be able to do what.
Yeah, it's hard, and I struggle with that as a manager. How do I judge success? Right? Are my department successful? Are my employees happy and successful? Like it's hard because you don't really see that. Like I hope that they're out there when they accomplish their work that they feel appreciated. But it's the same thing that goes to with the failure side of it. Like if they're not successful, I feel like that's a direct reflection of myself. Where if you're the person doing the hands-on instead of not behind the desk, it's so much more tangible, right? You know that you get that sense of accomplishment if you're getting the job done. To where now I'm kind of watching it unfold and more of the support role. It's definitely a hard balancing act. I was so used to just being the guy that was hands-on with every job I've ever had. It's been manual labor. I mean, I guess if you consider being a postal worker manual labor, but I sure do.
So how many hours do you think you spend behind the desk every week now, though?
Every week?
Yeah.
I mean, my whole day is behind a desk.
Did you ever see yourself?
I didn't. So,
No.
like I said, I never seen myself. I know I wanted to, right? I knew after being a mailman for 7 years and walking, I had walking routes and just being physically exhausted. And I did before that. When I worked at Cintas, I did install for pre-engineered, so that was manual labor. I worked warehouse jobs. I worked in the slaughterhouses, all manual labor stuff. And then it was like, I need a break. Like I would love to be the guy sitting behind the desk, telling other people what to do, and showing, doing this kind of part. But I never could see myself at that.
So how long did it take you to get
Comfortable.
with
Comfortable.
being behind the desk?
So I've been a supervisor I've been here for 10 years. I got a supervisor probably 5 years in. became a supervisor probably 5 years in. I probably didn't get comfortable with it till about 2.5 years ago. So maybe 7.5 years.
That's
before
actually
I got
longer
comfortable.
than yeah. It took me quite a bit of time to adapt to. I mean, it's when you come from that world and you go into this world, and it's like you look at it and you're like, oh wow, rose-colored glasses. You know, I have air conditioning every day. I've got heat every day. I've got 9 to 5. Right, that's what we always wanted. We wanted that stability. So,
The stability was it for me.
but you don't have the stability. Your phone does not stop.
never stops.
It's
It's
matter of
different.
fact, it's worse at night now than it ever was before because
And
you
you're
were
right.
able. You might have been late to come home Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever it was. But as soon as you came in the door, you really didn't have to worry about anything else. You know, I mean, it's just like last night. I was thinking about I've got a class on Friday that I've got to teach, and I'm like, you know, it's really that class is not specifically. I just go there, I do my thing. Somebody else is assigning who's going to be in those classes. But out of curiosity, I'm like, how many people are actually scheduled? And I started looking at it last night, and I'm like, it's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm breaking out my laptop to try and double check somebody
Yeah.
else's work.
Yeah, the responsibility is definitely greater, which
Yeah.
definitely causes, and I say that to any of my supervisors. Like once you're a supervisor, now that you're a supervisor, your work doesn't stop. Like you're expected to be available, and I feel the same way as in my role now. Like the work is my job is to be available when I'm needed. But I don't know. It's almost a little bit of a freedom kind of feeling too, and I say that because I have such a good team that I feel free to be able to do my job and not sweat that the other
get a
jobs
system.
aren't getting
Yeah.
done. But yeah, it definitely, going back to getting used to it. It took a while for me to get used to it. I think the hardest thing, and I don't know how you feel about this, is I generally personality wise is I am that guy that wants everybody to like me, and that's a really hard thing when you become a supervisor. And I became a supervisor of technicians who had been doing this longer than I've been alive.
That's a very tough thing because it's you want to be a people pleaser, right? And that's what we do. I mean, we please our bosses, but we also try and please our employees. But at the same time, it's like you've got to make that decision at some point where you really have to be the supervisor, right?
Yep.
You've got to say to somebody, "Hey, this is not right," and then you've got to figure out the solution. And that's another thing is like you come into this world, you know, from the field, and you expect that it's just going to be a hard line. It's just like if this is not this way, then this is what you do. But then you start to realize that everybody that you're dealing with is different.
Yeah.
It's an individual, and you know, a lot of us, I think, we came from those backgrounds, especially in the blue collar world, where it was like everything was kind of cut and dry. If you screwed up, you got in trouble, and there was some type of punishment, and that was the end of it. But the reality is that that's not exactly always the way that it works. You have to look at each individual when you've got production issues, when you've got quality issues, when you've got, and it's funny because we're limited as to what we can really help with. You know, I mean, we see a lot of these individuals. They come in, they're really promising, they're really smart people, but they've got a lot of life baggage with them as well that we can't touch
Yeah, there's
on.
nothing we can do about
No.
that, right? Yeah, it's and like you said, individuals are basis. You know, I went from working with guys that I became actual friends with that when I was a technician or shop technician, whatever you want to call it, to now supervising them and also supervising guys who had been doing the job for 20 to 30 years, and then trying to please everybody. And then when it really come down to was, Mike Lavasser sat me in his office one day after just, things were just going haywire for a couple, and not to get into specifics, but I just wasn't doing a good job. And he said, look, either you want to do this job or I have to find somebody who does, because there are people that want this job. And I knew I wanted the job. You know what I mean? Like I knew I did not want to go on the road. I did not want to go back in the shop. So I just had to, I had to make that decision. Like, okay, there are going to be hard things. There's going to be hard conversations. And then you find out quick. If everybody likes you, you're probably not doing a good job. At a certain role, and it's a hard pill to swallow. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true all the time. But there are responsibilities now that are certainly tougher. And I don't know what you can do to prepare for that. You know what I mean?
I think you have like a framework of what you think that they're looking for, right? and that's what you start with. But it's not until you can kind of get your own legs under you and realize how you can make the job yours. You own the job at that point instead of the job owning you.
So let me ask you
yes.
this. So we were talking a lot about, I mean, I guess you could call it work and life in a little bit. So your son's a firefighter now. How long has he been a firefighter?
Actually, he's about ready to have his first year anniversary. He's 24. He's been volunteering since he was 16. But we thought it was just kind of, just
A hobby?
yeah. And one of his high school teachers actually got him involved with the volunteer company that he still volunteers at. He's actually volunteering at two different. It's a secret. You're not supposed to volunteer at more than one house, but he volunteers at two houses. He works a career house, of course, for Baltimore County, and he's actually now seeing another firefighter, female.
Okay.
Just
putting it out there, huh?
Yeah, female. Yeah.
Female. All right. Well, how's that feel as a parent? Like, is it a sense of pride and a sense?
I'm the only thing I really have negative about any of it is just the fear. He's 24. He's his own man, but he's still my baby. He's still my kid. And it's like I've seen, so stepping back a little bit further, my father-in-law just recently passed. He was a firefighter for all of his career for Baltimore City. And the majority of the reason why his health failed was because of his job. So I look at stuff like that and I'm like, is that going to be the future for my kid? Hopefully it's not.
Right.
They do, things are a lot different now, just the same way we were just talking about with industry in general. If you're a firefighter, you're not running into fires the way that they did 30 and 40 years ago. The majority of what they do is medic calls, right? But I'm very proud. It's a different type of pride. It's funny because I was actually thinking about this the other day too, because my next one, he's 22. He works full time, plus he goes to college full time. And his grades are impeccable. And it's like, the pride is not different for him. It's just seeing the fact that we've got kids that we must have done something right. Yeah. The fact that they're achieving and they're not out doing stupid things. They're not out doing the wrong things. They're doing the right things. It's almost like, okay, great, you made these achievements, but the real question is, what's your moral fiber? Yeah. And that's where the pride really kind of comes in, I guess, as a parent, And then, of course, I've got the younger one, and he wants to be a firefighter. He's 13, and he's another.
Now got big brother to look up to, and
big brother, grandfather. Yeah, it's yeah.
So we were texting yesterday a little bit, or the day before, about topics, and I know you had recently had a house fire.
Yes.
And I know you're dealing with that and going through all that. Being in this industry, being with the background of your father-in-law being a firefighter and your son being a firefighter, it's kind of got to feel really weird to go through something like that, being so close.
What's funny is it's when anybody hears about the fact that, so just to throw it back there. So back in February, our house burned, not to the ground, but basically, we work in this industry. We see what we're protecting against. We see the products that we're dealing with, but you don't realize until it actually hits home exactly what this thing is that we're protecting against, that we're selling products to protect against, what it really does. So, the house itself, as far as the fire, like the burning portion of it, it's really not that bad, but the smoke and the water and all of the damage and all the stuff that you lose, we still count ourselves very lucky. We got out. Nobody got hurt. I've had car accidents where I've been much worse off. All of our pets made it out. But, like you start thinking about like all the other stuff that you don't think about. It's like you're selling an extinguisher. You don't think about the fact that this is going to be something that somebody's going to use to protect their family their house. You know, I mean, like my wife's wedding dress was like, where's that now? You know,
Yeah.
right? You don't think about
You don't
things
think
like
about
that.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
And and even when I was doing the fire extinguisher training class, this kind of stuff I talked about. Like, yeah, listen, this is a fire extinguisher class, but it's a life safety class. And that's what I was kind of getting at about, like, you're in this industry, you've seen it from the fire protection side, you see it from the firefighting side, and then actually to experience the tragic side of it, it's got to just be, I don't know,
Humbling.
hard to
It's-
digest
It is.
of all of it. And maybe give you more of a respect for the industry. Not that you didn't, but maybe respect's not the right word, but an appreciation,
Yeah.
for what is done. And I mean, I can't imagine, but all the little things that you just don't think about. Because yes, we agree that life and limb is more important than the material things, but those things still matter.
It's huge, you know. I mean, it's, and I mean, not to try and like turn this into. I mean, it is a fire line show, but at the same time, it's like you think about, like that restaurant, that little restaurant down the street that's got, they make sandwiches, right? They cook some eggs in the morning or something like that, so they've got a hood system, right? It's like, do they maintain that? And we have people that go in and look at that stuff. They look at that stuff all day long, but they don't think about the fact that if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily something that we did wrong, but it's just individuals out there that own that stuff, they don't think about that stuff until after it's gone.
Yeah.
That was somebody's livelihood.
Yep.
That was somebody's family that was supported off of cooking those eggs in the morning. So not to get too serious about it, but
No, but
yeah,
you're right.
It's
That's
a different
the thing,
yeah.
and we fight for it in our industry a lot. We try to get that point across to our customers that we are trying to protect life. We're also trying to protect property, and it's so hard because it's an industry where people go, "What are the chances?" You know what I mean? And then when you see it happen, then it's this appreciation of it. But by that time, it's too late.
It is. And the repercussions, it's even if it doesn't happen to your family directly, does it happen to somebody that you care about? Does it happen to somebody that you're supporting or supports you?
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know?
mean, I think you don't think about it. You don't think about all the things like you said that add up. Like it could get a restaurant, but there were people that worked in that restaurant. There were people that owned that restaurant. People that like going to that restaurant. It just affects so many different things, and that's why what we do here is so important and such a niche industry about a specialized fire protection. Right? I was at my wife's graduation last week, and everybody there is in law. They're either
Wait a second. Your wife just graduated?
well, she
What,
was
high
in
school, or-
getting basically her master's in courtroom management.
okay.
She works for her Circuit Court of Howard County, and but everybody in her class, their spouses are either attorneys or judges. All right, and so here I am, just some dude. First of all, I'm the only one not in a suit. Okay, I'm wearing polo shirt and jeans. That's as dressed up as Mark likes to get, and I'm meeting these attorneys and these justices, and what do you do? I'm in fire protection. And they look at me like they have no idea what that means.
No, they don't.
They
don't.
They want to say firefighter. They want to go firefighter.
Yes.
And then for some reason, when I say I'm not a firefighter, I feel like I'm downplaying what I do here. Like it's not important because it's not firefighting. It's not as prestigious as firefighting. But I don't believe that. Like I believe that
No,
it is
it's-
just as important, but I don't. I find myself defending what I do a lot to certain people.
Yes, that. It's funny too, because like somebody will ask me, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I teach fire protection," and of course, the first thing they think is, "Oh, you teach firefighters." No. Hopefully, I teach people stuff to either install or service or maintain the equipment so that you don't have to ever see a firefighter.
I say if we do our job, hopefully they don't have to do their
Yes,
job.
it's 110%. It's I respect and I appreciate what they do. I wouldn't, that it takes a lot to be able to do that, but also it takes a lot of forethought to make sure that those scenarios don't come about.
Well, I believe that, and because of that, I believe that the opposite is true. I believe that they respect what we do.
They do.
And I know that, a lot of your fire marshals are former firefighters, and, they understand the importance of what we do.
It's
here.
it's actually funny you bring that up. There's a little sideline to that is we do, and I can't really bring up the specifics of it as to who and whatnot, but we are frequently brought in and asked if we can be aides to assist in training individuals that are supposed to be looking at this stuff. You know, I mean, we've got firefighters that want to sit in on our training classes and our extinguisher training and everything else, because they can appreciate the fact that they're coming in on the backside, but there is another piece. You know, I mean, my son, he's a firefighter, but he asks me stuff about like sprinkler systems all the time because they just really don't have it. It's funny too, because I went into his volunteer house the one time, and I was laughing because the tag on the sprinkler system was like 4 years expired. I'm like, who's doing your stuff? And I found out that the county is responsible for providing funds, but it's not a priority.
Yeah, it's funny how that always happens. It's never going to happen to a firehouse. What
No.
actually just happened? It was in the news like 2 weeks ago.
It happens all the time. As a matter of fact, that's kind of an interesting thing. All the new firehouses that are built, if they get a call, so they have this thing they call tones. Basically, if they get a call, they hear tones throughout the building to let them know they got to wake up, they've got to get out. It also shuts down all their appliances. They didn't used to do that because the problem is that people would leave and the firehouses would burn down when they were gone.
Because they were in the middle of cooking breakfast.
It was
or
actually pretty common.
something. That makes sense.
I mean, think about it, because so you think about our lives, right? We have 3 meals-ish a day, right? But they're running 2 to 3 shifts out of those facilities. Right. So they're running multiple.
Yeah. It's
So
constantly someone in the kitchen, constantly someone.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but yeah, I think that there's definitely a mutual respect. I know from dealing with service, if we accidentally dispatched a fire truck when they got there, they were like absolutely cool with it.
Yeah. Not so much in pre-engineered. I mean, it doesn't usually cause a huge issue, but it gets annoying, I'm sure, after a while. You know, any of the repeat customers, it definitely gets annoying for them. But they definitely understand it. They get it. Yeah, one of my favorite things ever, one of my favorite stories, and we'll wrap this up soon, but was when Anna set off a wheel unit out here in the parking lot. The fire department showed up, and they weren't upset about it. They were more upset that they missed us discharging the wheel unit because they had never seen one used before. But they had seen the smoke from 695 and couldn't figure it out because they're like, we see smoke, but we don't smell fire, and it wasn't smoke. It was the mushroom cloud from the wheel unit going off, and they pull up in this road, and the guy's like, oh, man, I wish we could have been here to see that. You know, so they kind of get that appreciation for it. But, man, I definitely appreciate you coming in and giving your time today. So if you listened before, you know that I like to ask all the guests the same question. And you are no different, sir. So I want to ask you the question we ask everybody, and that is, what would Matt Meyers today say to Matt Meyers 23 years ago in 2001 walking through the door? If you could give that person any advice or say anything to that person, what would it be?
Take it all in as you go, because it's never going to be the same. It's every day is something that you didn't think you could see again. It's not all, huge. It's not all but amazing, but it's amazing. What's interesting is how it constantly evolves. Everything. It's your life and your personal life. It's your business life. The people that you work with every day, you start to see them change into different people. I mean, even like, you've got the portable shop. You see those guys come in, and 2 years later, they're all of a sudden, you find out they're really good salespeople. Everything is going to change.
Yeah, they come in, and I get this unique thing of getting to see a lot of these guys come in as kids,
mm-hmm.
And then they grow into young adults, and then now some of them grow into a career, and then they further their lives and get married and have children, and it's a pretty cool evolution to watch, like you're saying. So yeah, take it all in. I like that, man. That's great.
The only other piece to that, not only do you just take it all in, but realize that even when there are days that are not so great, the next day is just going to make up for it. It really is. I think we all have those days where it's like we feel like we didn't get anything done. It's been a struggle. It's just been a huge project that never feels like it's going to get done, and then all of a sudden, it's all better.
Yep. All right, man. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it, and thank you all for listening. We will talk to you next time.